And during the few moments that we have left, we want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dave's Google Classroom Tips and Tricks. Today I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the subject that I think is crucial when implementing any sort of technology for educational purposes. This subject is more philosophical in nature than my previous Tips and Tricks podcast, but a topic that needs to be visited nonetheless, whether you use technology in a traditional or blended classroom. That subject is how do we build an understanding and appreciation of all the wonderful things that make us uniquely human, while relying so heavily on technology to transmit the information we believe is vital in one way or another for the future success of our students. In the rush of utilizing the many benefits of technology throughout all levels of our school systems in the United States, this is one aspect that I believe often gets overlooked. I remember when I first started using digital technology in my classroom. Before, I would often use a whiteboard or marker to write my important notes, and then remaining instructional content would come from lectures, discussions, group or individual interactions, etc. The first tool I used often was PowerPoint. I, like many, mainly just used PowerPoint like a whiteboard. I wrote my important notes on the slides, but never really incorporated many pictures or animations because I didn't have time to create such elaborate slides. However, once I got more acclimated with PowerPoint, I started adding a picture here or there, or a funny video to help prove a point I was making, or colorful instructions for my students to complete a task. However, I started noticing something that was very disturbing to me. I could tell my students were enjoying the content and learning a lot from the creative PowerPoint presentations I had made, but I was losing my own skills as an instructor in more ways than one. I largely taught the same classes every year. Before using PowerPoint, I was always finding new and different ways to express the points I was trying to make in class. It was like every time I wrote my notes on the whiteboard for a particular class, I was relearning the topic I was teaching. This helped me criticize and ultimately improve my deliverable information. Once I started using PowerPoint to deliver my lessons, all I had to do each new semester was open the particular PowerPoint I was using for that class, and I was ready to go. Unfortunately, the information that I used to know by heart and could present at the drop of a hat was now nicely stored on the PowerPoints and not in my brain. I had begun to rely so heavily on the PowerPoint presentations that I started forgetting the material, or at least the nuanced, cool parts of the material. PowerPoint was making my students smarter, but making me dumber. I had to end up asking myself if I'd given too much power to this software package. Was I teaching the class, or was PowerPoint teaching the class? To answer that question, I'll refer to one of my favorite movie trilogies, The Matrix. These movies have really made an impression upon me when it comes to thinking about how we as humans interact with machines, and maybe more importantly, how they interact with us.
I hate sleeping. I never sleep more than a few hours. I figure I slept the first 11 years of my life, now I'm making up for it. What about you?
I just haven't been able to sleep much.
It's a good sign.
Of what?
That you are in fact still human.
There's nothing like a good Matrix quote. In the previous clip, the main character Neo is about to discuss the relationship between humans and machines with one of the counselors in the last human city, Zion. They continue their conversation.
Almost no one comes down here, unless, of course, there's a problem. That's how it is with people. Nobody cares how it works as long as it works. I like it down here. I like to be reminded this city survives because of these machines. These machines are keeping us alive while other machines are coming to kill us. Interesting, isn't it? Power to give life. And the power to end it.
We have the same power.
I suppose we do, but down here sometimes I think about all those people still plugged into the Matrix, and when I look at these machines, I can't help thinking that in a way we are plugged into them.
But we control these machines, they don't control us.
Of course not. How could they? The idea is pure nonsense, but it does make one wonder just what is control?
If we wanted, we could shut these machines down.
That's it. You hit it. That's control, isn't it? If we wanted, we could smash them to bits. Although if we did, we'd have to consider what would happen to our lights, our heat, our air.
So we need machines and they need us. Is that your point, Counselor?
No. No point. Old men like me don't bother with making points. There's no point.
The counselor's viewpoint is ironic. Both he and Neo have spent the majority of their lives in a computer-animated dream world, where they are completely dependent on machines to survive. And in the real world, as free men, they are forced to come to the conclusion that even in their freedom, they must still rely on machines to survive. It's an implied symbiotic relationship that the counselor presents to Neo. By the end of the trilogy, and here's a spoiler alert, this implication is made explicit when Neo sacrifices himself to save both humanity and the Matrix, man and machine. In our own reality, what has modern times brought us? If there's a single answer to that question, it's complexity. There is no simple answer to the question, how much should we really depend on technology for our daily lives? Or maybe better asked, how much of our humanity are we willing to give up to interact with technology? If you think this question is irrelevant, the next time you go to a mall, notice how many groups of teenagers that walk by and don't even acknowledge each other's presence because they're all glued to their cell phones. Then go visit a hospital where some people are alive and well only because a medical device like a pacemaker or a dialysis machine. So how do we deal with the combination of humanity and technology as teachers? In my opinion, I would say that if technology helps both teachers and students discover and become the best versions of themselves with respect to their unique talents, then the use of technology is not only advisable, but vital in the classroom. If technology and education becomes destructive to those ideals, and does little more than create a palliative escape, or relieve students or instructors of the intellectual responsibility of thinking, then educators would do well to go back to the blackboards of the traditional classrooms. This podcast was in no way an attempt to try to dissuade you from the use of technology in your classroom. The exact opposite is true. I dove into the philosophical today to express the need to think about using technology wisely in your classrooms. I think it is only fitting to end the podcast with a final Matrix quote. So enjoy, and see you next time on Dave's Google Classroom Tips and Tricks.
We're all here to do what we're all here to do. I'm interested in one thing, Neo, the future. And believe me, I know the only way to get there is together.